So the latest theme was referring to this Hebrew word that has a dual meaning, right? The word mashpi'in. Mashpi'in can mean they make you swear, which is relating to the soul being sworn that when it comes down to the world, it will choose to be a tzaddik, will choose to be righteous, and that's a promise we each make just before our souls come down to this world. And then you have the word mashpi'in, which could also mean masbi'in, which could also mean to satisfy, if you recall, which means that God fills us up with all of the strength. He satisfies our soul with all of the empowerment needed in order to overcome its challenges and in order to be righteous. Now, we clarified that the word righteous here is not the fifth level, the highest level of the Tanya, which means that a person was able to transform his evil into good, because most people can't reach that level. But really, it relates to our ability to be righteous at the moment, to overcome the evil inclination that we may have at this moment. And even though the evil inclination or the animal soul is still there, lurking, still trying to distract us, but we're able to push it out immediately, even in the realm of thought, not just in the realm of speech and action, but in the realm of thought, as we've spoken about. So anyway, and then we went into, if you recall, we went into the idea of challenges, overcoming challenges. Some challenges externally are impossible to overcome, but internally, the way we dance through them, as we mentioned, uh, is really what we're able to do, and that strength we receive again from that must be in from that moment before we even came down to this world, as our soul was sent to this world. Anyway, so that's the big idea. Let's continue. Continue where we left off. Bottom on page 33. Does anyone want to read? Anyone?
Sure, I'll read.
Please, thank you, Marco.
Okay. In reality, the inner content of any oath, whether initiated by oneself or administered by others, is the imparting of strength, the reinforcement of something already existent. A person decides that he wants something. To strengthen his resolve and infuse it with added significance and force, he takes an oath. I have sworn and confirmed that I will keep your righteous judgments. A person can take an oath regarding commandments, whether to accept a particular commandment or to invest greater energy in its performance. An oath, then, is an acceptance and reinforcement of some already existing commitment. So, too, the empowerment given to an infant, be righteous and do not be wicked, should be understood as an added reinforcement to be a tzaddik and not a rasha.
Right. On a very practical level, this is also why Jewish law discourages people to swear. In fact, that whether to get into it or not, but in Israel, when soldiers have to pledge their allegiance to the army, so there are two types of saying "I swear." If you've been to ceremonies like that, I'm sure you've heard both. Some say "Ani nishba," which means really "I swear." Some swear "Ani matzhir." Some say "Ani matzhir," which means "I declare." They don't swear, because we discourage swearing in Judaism. And we can only swear once we know that we indeed have the ability to follow through, to keep that promise. And the reason we discourage is because sometimes we make promises so loosely that we break, that we don't know that we have the strength to keep them, and then we break them. And breaking a promise is already very severe. So we discourage people from swearing. So if you're already swearing, it really means, as Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here in his commentary, if you're already swearing, it really means that you really believe that you have the power to keep that promise. So if you're swearing that you're going to be righteous, that means that you have the power to be righteous. Now, again, let me just clarify. Being righteous doesn't mean that you have to be a tzaddik at that highest level. That's only for the selected few, as we've mentioned many times. But it means that at this time, at this moment, with this person, at this place, I can be a tzaddik. And that's a swear that we took because we believed in our ability that we can keep it, and we won't need to break it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have taken it, as Jewish law very much recommends. So it's interesting just to note the halakhic aspect of this practical aspect of this. I do want to say just one more thing, and that is it's interesting that, in Jewish law, someone who swears he's he's it, the swearing itself, the vow that a person makes, can be a vow that is just too general. There's a vow that is too general. For example, if I say, I don't know, I'm not going to, I'm not going to sleep for the next 5 days. If not only is that a vow that's almost impossible to keep, but also it's way too general. You're not going to take a nap. You're not going to sleep at all at night, or you're going to sleep just 1 hour. So in Jewish law, you actually have to specify the details of your vow. Otherwise, your vow can be considered null. You actually have to have in mind what exactly you are taking upon yourself. Otherwise, again, if a vow is way too general, it's not even considered a vow. It's as if you said nothing. Now, same here. When I say that I am swearing to be righteous, then in order to be able to keep that promise, I should have in mind what it means to be righteous. Now, because everyone has different ways that this righteousness can express itself, we have to think of ways we can actualize this promise, each their own. But to just rely on the promise that we made before we were born is not good enough. If we want, okay, from a halakhic perspective, if we want to be able to pledge in a halachic way, we already have to have in mind, even today, as we start off the day, how are we going to actualize this promise? Now, it's done usually in 2 or 3 domains. One, everyone knows what their weakness is. My weakness is not the same as someone else's weakness. So we have to think of that weakness and say, okay, today I may be faced with this weakness again, and therefore I'm going to channel this very general promise towards this very specific detail. That's number one. Otherwise, again, this vow may be just null. Number two, I think that everyone also has their own plan of the day, right? You know that you might have a meeting at 10 and then something else at 11 and so on and so forth. So you already know based on your plan which moments of the day will be more challenging, which moments of the day will be less challenging. So based on that, one should also figure out where he can actualize his promise and where he has to adhere to that promise, maybe in more ways than others or in more moments than others, depending on the plan of the day. So if I know that I have a meeting that's going to be challenging, I have to keep in mind, hey, I made this promise. Let me actualize it during this meeting, particularly because during the rest of the day, it'll be easier. But that's number two. And then number three, I think we also have to be open to not the challenges or the plan that we have, but the plan that we don't have. And what this means is that we have to be open to having God throw us all sorts of things during the day and not to lose our cool, but to be able to remember our promise during those moments that will come unexpectedly. But because we're ready mentally and emotionally to accept those moments that will come unexpectedly, we'll also be ready to fulfill our promise then. So I think that when we specify and we bring down the general promise that we made before we were born to those very specific realms, then we can keep it. Then we can actualize it. Because again, if it remains too general, a promise might not mean much, as Jewish law states. So it's important to visualize many ways the details of that promise, not just to keep it, I made this promise once, but really it's too general, so it doesn't mean anything. So, and then again, that's halakha, that's Jewish law that teaches us that. Anyhow, so that's just to add a dimension to this. But I welcome comments, disagreements, ideas. Otherwise, we can continue. No one? Okay, so we'll continue, which is unintelligible.
which is unintelligible at first glance. Since he is warned, be righteous, where is the need to put him on oath again that he will not be wicked? If
Right.
the oath is effective, his swearing to be tzaddik would be adequate. If it is not, why bother to administer an additional oath not to be a rasha?
Right. I mean, that's right. It's a repetition. If you're going to say that you'll be righteous, obviously it means that you won't be a wicked. So why the need to say that you won't be a wicked? So what's the answer? Go for it.
The answer is that inasmuch as not everyone is privileged to become a tzaddik, nor has a person the full advantage of choice in this matter. It is not possible for everyone to be a tzaddik in action and thought, to undergo the essential transformation in which one experiences delight in God's presence and truly despises evil. That is why the oath, be it tzaddik, alone is impossible to administer to every person. But even as a simple provider of added strength, such an oath has little point, for being a tzaddik is not a matter of human choice. Yet, as we will see, through extraordinary efforts and self-sacrifice, the Benoni might be able to rise in a certain sense to the level of a tzaddik. An unrealistic expectation for most people, the matter hinges on unique situations and on striving that exceed the normal spectrum of human choice.
Right. And we'll soon see what these circumstances are. But I do want to make this point again that even though we can't be complete tzaddikim and eradicate evil and transform evil into good, because most of us will still have evil lurking and tempting us, the Beinoni in many ways can be higher than a tzaddik on an essential level, on a spiritual level. Why? Because the tzaddik, for him, he's on cruise control. It's easy for him to be good. While the Beinoni has to face challenges in order to be good, face these temptations in order for him to be good. And therefore, for him, overcoming those battles is something that the tzaddik doesn't have. But because we're able to overcome those battles and to prove our allegiance to God each and every time, then we can be on a higher level than the tzaddik itself, who doesn't have to overcome those battles, who doesn't have to face those challenges. But when we face them and we pledge our allegiance to God, our pledging of allegiance to God is something that is very real, very genuine. The tzaddik doesn't have the opportunity to make those pledges of allegiance, so to speak, to God in such a profound way. And therefore, again, essentially, the Beinoni can be on a higher level than tzaddik. He has different things. But our ability to say, God, I choose you over my animal soul many times during the day is giving us a level of connection to God, a profound level of connection to God that the tzaddik can't achieve because he doesn't have those tests. So we should be discouraged by the fact that we can't be tzaddikim. We should be encouraged by it. In many ways, it gives us a level of connection that even to God, again, to all that is good, that even a tzaddik doesn't have. That's it's important to remember that. Yes. I'm just reminded, I can't divorce this thought from this week's portion, but it's just a powerful idea. When Joseph is seduced by the wife of Potiphar, we just read it yesterday. And it's an interesting point that the Hasidic commentaries make, very much connect to this idea. That is that Joseph is there. Just imagine, put yourself in his shoes. He's a young lad, maybe 17, 18 years old. He's alone in this world. His family abandoned him. Actually, they tried to assassinate him. And here, finally, someone gives him some love. And here's this very beautiful woman who says to him, come, shichvai me, come sleep with me. And Joseph has really nothing to lose on paper, if you think about this. First of all, he can only gain from this. He's working for her, and she promises him all sorts of promotions. Secondly, he finally has the love that no one gave him. Then, number three, he doesn't live in the internet age, so no one will find out. And you can add all sorts of justifications. But he runs away and he doesn't fall into that trap. Now, of course, the question is how? How was he able really to overcome that animal soul, to be a Beinoni at that hour? Even though we call Yosef a tzaddik, later suddenly became a tzaddik, but still, how did he overcome it? He still had that temptation. The point Rashi even points out that there's um, a Talmudic passage that speaks about how he really wanted to give in and how his temptations were so strong and were burning like fire. But in any case, how did he overcome it? And the answer is in this verse that grammatically also doesn't quite make sense, because it says that when she grabbed him to trying to force him to sleep with her, she grabbed him by his clothing, by his jacket, vatitfeseo bevigdo lemo, which really literally means that she grabbed him by his garment, saying, lemor in Hebrew is like out of place. It should have said that she grabbed him by his jacket or by his clothing, bevigdo, and she said. What does it mean, saying? Who's saying what? Should have said, vatomer, and she said. What does it mean, lemor? And again, the Hasidic commentaries explain that it wasn't her speaking. It was Joseph's animal soul speaking. How do we know that? Because vatitfeseo bevigdo, that she caught him by his clothes, could be read that he was caught, or that wasn't him, it wasn't her, sorry, clinging onto his clothes, but rather it was his animal soul clinging onto his soul. And the animal soul here is called bigdo, which can also mean betrayer, a traitor. The traitor caught him saying, wasn't her saying. The traitor caught him saying, the animal soul who betrays you was telling Joseph, hey, go do it. And then he said, no, vayanos vayetza chutza. He fled and he left. He went outside. Because very often we have a second side to us. There's the side that's completely aligned with the godly soul, which is our true essence. But then we have the animal soul side, which is the other side that betrays us all the time, because it causes us to do things that don't reflect who we truly are. And that animal soul speaks to us often. But the only way to deal with it is not to deal with it. As Joseph proves here, just leave, go outside, distract yourself, do something else. And then when you catch your breath and when your senses return to you, you'll realize that you did the right thing, and that the animal soul was overcome because you were able to recognize that the animal soul is but a traitor. That's really what these Hebrew words mean. But itfeseo bevigdo, the traitor caught him and said to him, hey, do the sin. And Joseph fled. But in many ways, this is what this commentary is reminding us, that very often we have a traitor within. We can't get rid of him. The tzaddik can, but most of us can't. But it doesn't mean that we're any lower than the tzaddik. Because we have a traitor, because we are able to overcome him, we are essentially on a higher realm, on a higher plane than the tzaddik himself, because our allegiance to God is real. Anyway, that's just to connect it to the portion. Let's continue. Bottom of page, unless please speak your minds. Again, I shouldn't be the only one monologuing.
As far as vows are concerned, you mentioned saying something general is invalid if it's not specific.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you could have a vow that's very specific that is also invalid. As for example, Ifta sacrificing his daughter,
Right.
that vow should not have been honored because it was not valid.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was Iftach's foolishness, to say the least. That's right. Iftach is the story of he promised to God, he pledged, he swore. And that's again what we discourage, swearing. But he swore to God that if he wins the battle, that whatever comes out of his house first will be sacrificed to God. and he won, and he came back, and the first thing that came out of his house was his daughter. And he thought that he needed to keep that pledge. And he sacrificed his daughter, which is just horrible. But you're right. That's why we have also what's called in halakhic terms, Hatarat Nedarim, which, by the way, we say every year, the eve of Rosh Hashanah, which means the annulment of vows. Because if you did make a vow that you regret, that maybe you shouldn't have made, then it's not like you have to stick to it no matter what. You can annul it. How do you do that? You can do that not just on the eve of Rosh Hashanah. You can have a bet din, 3 people, listen to your vows, and then annul those vows for you. So you're right. Good point. Yeah. Good point. All right. Back to the Beinoni now. So thank you for that, William. Just thinking regarding the Beinoni, there's a, the Kotzker Rebbe, who was a very harsh, very fiery Rebbe, who would just tell the truth no matter what. Truth that can hurt sometimes. But he was once speaking about this very notion that Beinoni has a traitor within him, and a person has to overcome that traitor, etc. But it exists, and it's always there. And someone came to the Kotzker Rebbe and said, "But the Rebbe, I don't feel that there's a traitor within me. I don't feel anything. So what do you make of that?" And the Rebbe went on to say that it's this traitor. You should know, you should feel it so strongly, because it's like the guillotine, is that what it was called? That big metal knife or sword or whatever it was, blade.
Guillotine.
Guillotine, thank you. That many used in order to chop off people's heads. It would come sliding down on you and then chop off a person's neck. Right? Guillotine. Thank you. Anyway, so the Kotzker Rebbe said that one should feel that this traitor is there on top of his head all the time, as if this guillotine is about to chop off your head. That's what the traitor wants to do. He wants to chop off your spiritual head. So you should feel it all the time. So a student came and said, "Well, I don't feel it. I just don't feel it. I don't feel like I'm threatened by this traitor all the time." So the Kotzker Rebbe said that means, so if you don't feel it, it means one or two things. One, to give you the benefit of the doubt, maybe it means that you're a tzaddik, that you've eradicated your evil, you've transformed into good. Or, okay, the Kotzker Rebbe was very harsh. He tells him, or it means that you're already dead, that there's no hope for you, that the traitor already chopped off your head. But what the Kotzker Rebbe was really saying is that, many people fault themselves for feeling that, I have another side, I have a traitor, and I don't know what to do with it, and they beat themselves down. And no, it's a sign that you're alive.
Yeah.
It's a sign that you're still in this fight, and that God is giving you empowerment. God is empowering you to overcome it each and every moment. Joseph had it. So it's a sign that you're alive. Don't beat yourself. You should celebrate that. And anyway, that was the line of the Kotzker Rebbe. Okay, let's continue. Bottom of page 34. So we said that there are times in which the Beinoni can achieve this level of tzaddik from time to time, to experience. Let's continue.
To experience true delight in God and to actually and truly abhor evil. This is the domain of the tzaddik, the delight in God complemented by the abhorrence of evil. The Benoni can achieve greatness, approximating a tzaddik in all ways and thoughts, but he cannot despise evil. A tzaddik, in contrast, lives in a dimension seemingly beyond evil's horizons. Evil in itself, or the desire for it, is incomprehensible through the lens, however magnified, of his own existence. His view of someone committing a sin has much in common with the reactions of a normal person when visiting a mental institution. He observes individuals carrying on, and he thinks, how can this be? He gazes in wonder at someone eating glass and struggles to understand the temptation to do such a thing. Although the tzaddik is also distinguished by his delight in God, here the demarcation is not as clear. Non-tzaddikim can derive great pleasure as well from Torah and the commandments. It therefore follows that not even taking of such an oath will transform a non-tzaddik into a tzaddik.
Right. So this goes back to this idea that we said at the beginning of the chapter 14, that the more you love God, the more you detest evil. You recall that? And that there are times in which the Benoni can truly fly into this emotion of loving God, and that evil is not only just a faraway thought, but it's abhorred by him. It's like, how can you be eating glass, like this example? And we have moments like that. Benonis have moments like this, where they can fly into an emotion. Sometimes it happens during prayer. Sometimes it happens during while doing a mitzvah, or usually during times of connection with God, where we realize, wow, this is such a delight. How could I even think and entertain the thought of following this traitor? At the end of the day, this traitor stands against God himself. So it's like, wow. But that, you're not always there. The tzaddik is always there. So you go back to the day-to-day life and the routine and the day-to-day obstacles. But we do have, the Benonims do have moments in which they can at least achieve a taste from time to time of what the tzaddik is like all the time. Now, why is God doing this? And we'll conclude with this thought. Is it to give us just, how do they call it? A tease? Is it really just to play with us? I mean, why give it to us if we can't be there all the time? Is he teasing us? And the answer, no, is that God is giving us almost gas stations, so to speak. That at times our fuel is emptied out by these fights with the animal soul. It takes a lot of energy. It takes much more than that sometimes. Just like Joseph, read the story of Joseph. And Joseph faced the impossible challenges after he had to overcome this animal soul. So it empties you out emotionally, spiritually. So from time to time, God says, don't worry, I'm with you. I'll fill you up with some gas, some energy. I'll remind you of who you are fighting for, and what you are fighting for. And that gives us the strength to go to the next challenge and to overcome that too. In many ways, the more we are connected, the more moments we have like that, the more we have also the strength to then overcome those challenges, which is many ways Joseph's secret, if we go back to Joseph. He had moments in which he remembered who he truly was. For example, it says that during that moment in which he overcame the sin of temptation by the wife of Potiphar, the image of his father, Rashi says, that the image of his father came to him. What does that really mean? He remembered who he was. He flew into that emotion of, oh, that's the true me. And I love that true me. And that gave him the strength. Again, that was his gas station to overcome that sin at that moment. So God doesn't tease us through those moments. He empowers us through those moments. And that's what gives us it gives the Benoni the strength again to continue to achieve those small victories, which, as we said, essentially lifts him up to a higher degree, at least on some level, than the tzaddik himself.